This is Reality Dispatch, written by Jim Mins.
Trevor watched the streets on the passenger side of the patrol car, a nightly occurrence. The only difference was that this was the first night on patrol since the collapse of the justice system. Now their impact on the streets would be negligible. The courts no longer functioned. The people had lost faith. Cops were now out to keep the peace and nothing else. "I feel more vulnerable, man," he said to Rocky, his partner. They had been together for 7 years. "I don't," Rock replied. "It's liberating." Liberating? Trevor was surprised by his response. He had always known Rocky to be by the book. "Yes, liberating. This is what it was like in the old times. We're back to the good old days, my boy." He often referred to him in a derogatory, undermining tone, despite only being 5 years older. Back in the Old West, on these very streets, there weren't any courts of law. That was a luxury. "You know what they called cops?" Trevor shook his head. "Peacekeepers, pretty straightforward. We keep the peace. Kick heads in when we gotta. That's it, that's the job. No more reports, no more prisoner transfers. Kick heads and move on." Trevor had family who lived in these parts, along with the Arizona ranges. He had heard stories of the lawlessness that permeated through the roads and backwaters. Stagecoach robberies, farmers driven off their lands, cattle stolen, scalps collected. All done under a dog-eat-dog pretense, atrocities with no repercussions. The only thing that drove out the bandits was the war, bringing with it another form of hell. Good stories to dine out on, not necessarily a code to live under. "Sounds like hell on earth," he said. "Sounds like freedom," Rocky replied. A car was swerving erratically on Wilshire Boulevard. Rocky ignited the sirens and sped up to meet it at the next intersection. A red light held it in place as they pulled up alongside. "Careful, partner, we should still get them over to the side of the road first." "Relax." Side by side at the red light, the driver wound down the tinted windows of its 1984 Porsche. A couple had been listening to loud synth pop. The aroma of alcohol permeated beyond the window, the unmistakable smell. "You were swerving all over the road back there," Rocky informed the male driver. The couple began to chuckle. "We're sorry, officer, it was her fault," he said as the lady laughed louder. "Well, whoever's fault it was, you're putting lives at risk," he said with a straight face. Trevor leaned forward, holding a similar expression. The couple sobered their gaze. The green light filled their faces. "Don't move, I ain't done talking," Rocky instructed. "You could have killed someone," he repeated, drawing his revolver from its holster and hanging his left arm out the driver's side door, the pistol firmly in his grip. "Please, officer, we don't want trouble, honestly," the man began to explain. "You've also been drinking. We can smell it from here," Rocky concluded. He opened the door of the patrol car and proceeded over to the driver's side of the Porsche. He glanced over at Trevor and mouthed the words, "Cover me." Standing by the window, he knocked on the glass for the driver to wind down the other tinted window. A car pulled up behind them and honked at the sight of the green light. Rocky raised his firearm, and the car quickly maneuvered into reverse and exited the way it came with a swift U-turn. "Are you gonna cover me or what?" Rocky yelled at Trevor. The younger partner exited the patrol car and drew his weapon, pointing it at the passenger side of the Porsche, getting a glimpse of the fear that radiated in the eyes of the young drunk woman as she began to sob. "As you know, the courts no longer function in the United States. This means I no longer need to ask you for your license and registration. I just need to keep the peace. I put it to you that you were swerving up and down Canyon Road over to Wilshire Boulevard and you almost killed several people doing so. I put it to you that you were drunk in the process of committing these acts. Now, since there aren't any judges for me to present you to anymore, I will inform you that I will punish you accordingly. You will receive a bullet through the palm of each of your hands, and then you may be on your merry way. How does that sound?" The driver put his gear shift into drive and hit the accelerator. Rocky watched as it sped down the boulevard from a stationary position, hitting as high as 60 miles per hour. He pointed his revolver and fired 3 shots in the direction of the back window. He could not tell if it did any damage, but it didn't matter. An SUV traveling in the crossroad was entering just at the very moment the Porsche had arrived. The collision was unavoidable. Trevor was sure all involved had been killed instantly. Rocky got behind the wheel of the patrol car once more. Trevor followed suit. They buckled up simultaneously as Rocky said with a laugh, "I guess we are first responders now, too."
Already active in the system, so I already explained her she won't be getting a new report.
At 3 a.m., they broke for lunch at their favorite hot dog stand on the outskirts of Hollywood. It was Trevor's turn to buy. They both ordered 4 buns with the lot. They leaned against the car while they ate. The radio of the vendor blared out NPR public radio. They contemplated moving away but were too exhausted. They munched on in silence as they listened. The process of the presidential pardons caused all of this, the anchor was explaining. The constant scramble to get family and friends out of the harm's way of jail caused a mass shock to the system of the average American, citizens' reliance on the justice system. It was politicians like Biden and Trump who abused their powers, just as the early French did, just as the early British royals did, that completely destroyed the fabric of the justice system. That's why we don't have any courts now. That's why we don't have any ability to have our day in court to seek justice for an unjust act. That is why we have cops roaming the streets making up their own rules. It all went down the toilet and someone needs to do something. Rocky walked back over to the vendor, a mouthful of hot dog just swallowed. "Can you turn this shit off?"
For more stories of fact-based fiction, head to jimmins.substack.com.